To me, I'm always interested, Rachel, in understanding how a person got to where they've gotten or where they've landed in life. And if I'm honest, and I mean this in the highest compliment because it's my favorite movie in the world, I look at your resume and the things you've done, and I think, man, this woman's like almost like Forrest Gump of sorts. Like, doing all these crazy things, being in the intersection of a lot of incredible and important moments in the world. And, but more importantly, like, to me, the bigger thing that's interesting is what's made you into this person that you are today. Like, how did you develop the kind of the drive and the passion and the interest in kind of nurturing a Nexus like organization, but then also how'd you get there? Like, I mean, I don't think anybody could tactically try to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to create an organization that takes care of all these next geners, and I want to have influence all over the world. It's just there's got to be an evolution to your story, and I'd love to hear it if you're willing to share it with us.
It's such a beautiful question. Thank you. Man, where do you start? Um, I guess
Where'd you
there's.
grow up?
Oh, okay. I was born in Brooklyn and lived there till I was 10. My parents were school teachers and principals, and then we moved to Princeton, New Jersey, and I lived there for a bunch of years. And I guess the interesting thing about my family is that I come from 7 generations of United Church of Christ ministers and missionaries. So I come from a long tradition of people with a lot of faith who went to cultures all over the world and had conversations and engaged in dialogue about faith and values and mission and purpose, I think for many generations before I was here. And then my mother, who's the daughter of 2 ministers, married a man who was raised Jewish. So I grew up in an interfaith family, always feeling like I was there to be a bridge builder between communities of faith and communities of rural and urban, moving from Brooklyn to Princeton, and always saw myself as someone who could walk between worlds and help translate people's experience to each other to build friendships. Um, and I think friendships are the core of everything. People ask me all the time about Nexus as a network, and I think of Nexus as a family, not a network.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't agree with everything and everyone in your family, but you care about them enough to listen and learn, and to sometimes help them understand your perspective or to help yourself understand theirs. So I think that's the basics of the growing up. Um, and then I'd never actually left the East Coast of the US when I was in college at the University of Pennsylvania. And I was studying international relations, so I didn't have a lot of street cred. And then I heard about a free winter break trip called Birthright 2000. And if you had one Jewish grandparent, you could sign up. And I had 2 Jewish grandparents, though I was raised Christian. And so I signed up for this free trip and got my first passport and went on a free trip to Israel. And
Hmm.
I literally went because it was free. I would have loved to go anywhere else but Israel. And I'm on this free trip, and suddenly I met the donors, the philanthropists behind the trip on the first night, and I realized it wasn't free. It was actually a gift, and that these
Hmm.
amazing donors had saved money for a decade to send this one trip of kids who had some Jewish connection somewhere in them to Israel to find a piece of themselves they may never have gone looking for. And so I decided to live each of those 10 days as a gift instead of thinking about it as a free trip. And it shifted my mindset so dramatically. I woke up early. I asked more than my fair share of questions. I knew nothing about Israel, nothing about the Jewish people, nothing about Jewish identity. I was sang in the church choir my whole life. And in humbling myself to learn and ask so many questions and not be afraid to look foolish, I soaked up a culture and a people and a tradition and a religion and a heritage. And I learned the power of philanthropy because I never would have, I think,
Hmm.
gone to Israel myself or explored my Jewish, heritage if it wasn't for this trip. And I learned that I didn't know if I wanted to be Jewish or Christian, but I knew I wanted to be a philanthropist, which was amazing to be 20 years old and have no money and know that in your life what you want to do is give other people extraordinary life-changing experiences that are so much more than what money could buy. So I knew I wanted to be a philanthropist in that moment. And after I graduated Penn, I went to work for this amazing woman, Nancy Rubin, who was a former ambassador to the UN for Human Rights. And she's a great philanthropist in her own right. And I say I studied at the University of Nancy Rubin because I didn't get a master's or a PhD or an MBA. I stood by her side for 8 years and learned everything I possibly could from a great feminist, humanitarian, global citizen. And that was an education that you could never have bought.
Wow. So that was kind of your version of Joe Ritchie in my life.
Exactly.
Is going to the university of a mentor. Um, you're getting early experiences to the United Nations. It's big. I've been in those arenas a little bit, and it's kind of awe-inspiring early on, and then maybe frustrating after a while when you're trying to make a change. How did you make a transition from there to what was your next move, and what was your next orientation? I mean, it's a big deal. I know what it's like. It's a big deal to move from your mentor to the next phase in life. How did you find yourself in that next phase?
So every year is the International Year of something. This year, 2022, is the International Year of Glass. 2011 was the International Year of Youth. And when it's the International Year of something, which it always is, the UN likes to say at the end of the year, look at these 300, 500, whatever it might be, programs that we were able to host and put together for the International Year of fill in the blank. So a childhood friend and I wrote the UN a proposal saying we'd love to host a program for the International Year of Youth. We'd love to bring together next gen from the most influential families in the world to inspire them to really combine forces, learn from each other, and figure out how they can hurry history and make a difference on every single social issue around. And the UN wrote back and said, sounds great, here's a date, and it was in 6 weeks.
Ha!
So, and to make things even more complicated, it was a week before my wedding in Costa Rica. So I had to plan both of those at once. But you don't say no when the UN gives you a room, because they're not just giving you a room, they're giving you their stamp of approval and their credibility. So we could then call up and email everyone we knew who might be a good fit to represent their family and their family interests, or who were amazing social innovators with really proven models that were ready to scale. And so we reached out to everyone we knew and we said, can you join us in 6 weeks at the UN for the first ever, Next Gen Philanthropy and Social Innovation Summit? And about 75 people signed up, which was remarkable because it was over the holidays and we thought no one was really going to.
So how did you make the connections? Like, how did you get in the doors of these families? Did you pick up the phone and call them? Like, what did you do?
So my co-founder.
How did people help people make these cold calls to shifting into like a totally new organization that doesn't exist? I know how hard it is to create something that doesn't exist to get people to jump on board. How did you do it, Rachel?
That's a good question. I give most of the credit to my co-founder, Jonah Wittkamper. He cold called the Forbes 500 list and said, we are hosting an event with the UN. We are inviting the Forbes 500 list. And we are inviting each family to send one Next Gen member to represent your family. So think carefully about who you'll send. So it wasn't framed as, do you want to join, who we are. It was like, this is happening at the UN. You can only invite one person. Who's it going to be? I think that really shifted into credentializing us and then making it feel like a scarce resource. And scarcity can breed eagerness. So I give him all the credit there. And then we had the first event, and people got in a line at the end, and we thought they were coming to thank us for bringing them together from around the world. And not so much. They said, this was wonderful, but there aren't enough people from Asia, or there aren't enough people from Africa, there aren't enough people from the Middle East. And so we said, well, this was the event. Ta-da! We're done. And they're like, no, you're not. You just lit a spark. And so we birthed a movement without meaning to. And we're
Mm.
so humbled to have done so. And so I said to everyone who was there, you're everyone who responded to us. This is the power of the community we can build. But now we want you to be the architects of your own community. So if you could give us each 3 to 5 names of people that you think must be in this room, I will do the hard work of requesting a second room for the future in this year for the International Year of Youth. And lo and behold, that was February. When we were meant to just host one event, and that was all. We didn't mean to start a nonprofit or a movement, and suddenly I rented a room for July for 350 people, and the people who came to the first summit each invited 3 to 5 people, and we had a glorious, really meaningful event in July. And the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon came. He was not invited, but it was in his house, so he came, and he spoke, and he said words that really just hit my heart, and have always stayed there. And he said, at every other room in this building, people are having meetings about future meetings we're going to have, about other meetings that we're going to have, to create task forces and create committees to create change. And in this room, people are sharing their experience and the change they're making in the world, and others are raising their hand to collaborate in real time immediately. And that is the hallmark of your generation. And we're so excited that he said that, and that was a call to action for everyone to act now and not wait. When you don't have to be limited by the bureaucracy of organizations and governments and NGOs, and you can just dive in and collaborate.